All right, let's move on to a slightly more complex example of generic classes where we'll have two type parameters inside of our class. Let's imagine that we would like to create a class for an API response, and it's going to always have three properties: is successful, data, and error. Is successful will just be a Boolean showing if the request has been successful or not. Data will be of some type, we don't really know. It might be an object or a string, or in case there is no data returned, it might be no. And error will again be of some type, we don't know, might be a string or an object, or no in case there is no error. So let's see how we can figure this out. I'm going to start by creating a class. I'm going to call it API response. First, we have is successful as a property, which is going to be of type Boolean, true or false, right? Secondly, we will have data, which will be of some type or no. But now, how do we handle the some type? We don't know what it will be. We can't just say string or Boolean or whatever. We don't really know. Well, we can introduce a generic, right? So I'm going to go immediately after the class name, put my angle brackets and write T, or whatever you prefer, but T is kind of an unwritten convention. So T will be the type I'll use for my data. Again, I currently don't know what it will be. I'll figure that out later. For now, it's just a placeholder. So T, which could be a string or an object or something else, or no if there is no data returned. All right, and then I also have an error, which is going to work on the same principle. It might be some object or string, or it might be no. And your initial thought might be, well, we can write T or no. And this could work, but this is very restrictive because now if we have both data and error, which is kind of weird, but we don't really know how the API works, they have to be in the same format. And very often they will not be in the same format. So that's not really a great idea. Let's try to introduce a second type parameter U and use that type parameter U for the error. Now, these two might be of different format or of different type, and it will still work. And that's what we want, right? So let's move on to the constructor. It will be pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to explain it in detail. I'm just going to receive all these three as parameters. Again, just a reminder, the names here could be different. The types must match, of course. And also, you could use the shorthand syntax that TypeScript offers. You can check it out if you want, and if you haven't seen it before. But I'll just stick to the regular one. So, is successful equals is successful. This dot data equals data. This error equals error. Okay, so far so good. What else can we do? Well, we can create a method that is going to show us the result, but it's going to work in the following way. If we have valid data, we're going to return the data. If, however, there's some sort of an error, we're going to throw the error. So let's see how this method will work. I'm going to call it getResult, maybe, getResult. And now, what will the return type be? It's going to be just T. T is the type of the data, right? Because if there's an error, I'm not going to return it. So I don't need to say T or U. If there's an error, I'm not going to return it. I'll directly throw it, which will kind of stop the execution of the whole program. But that's my goal currently. So if the data is no, I'm also not going to return it. I'll throw an error. But if there is data, I know for sure that it will be of type T and I can return it. So here I can say if, firstly, I need to check if it has been successful. If it hasn't been successful, then I definitely need to throw an error. So I'm going to say if this is successful, and I can either say equals false, or the shorthand notation for this is to put an exclamation mark in front if this hasn't been successful. Or if this dot data is equal to no, then something went wrong, right? Let's say that something went wrong. Of course, if this is supposed to handle different requests, in some cases, not having data might be normal. But for now, let's say that we consider it abnormal. Or we could also say if the error is different from no. There are a lot of ways to implement this, but for now I'll stick to this one. And I'll say throw new error. And as an error message, I could actually say send this dot error, right? But now this underlines it, and it's basically complaining because we don't know what the type of the error will be. It's just a generic type for now, so it doesn't really know if it will be able to process it well enough in order to display the message. And the easiest fix to this is to just wrap this in brackets and use the string method, right? It's not always going to display a perfectly understandable error, but it's going to work, and this is just a demo, so I think this works fine. And then if everything is all right, if we have data, then we can return this dot data, like this, okay? Fantastic. Now let's just test this class. I'm going to pull this down a little bit. So I'll create an instance of the class. Let's say that we're receiving user information from the API, So I'm going to say user response. Oh, come on, I can't write. User response 1 for now. And this will be new API response. And let's say that the first time we send the request, it was successful. So I'm going to pass in true for is successful. For data, I'll pass in just a string. And now I'm going to say pencil. And for error, I'll pass none. No, we have no error in this case. Is that working? Yes, we see no errors. And can we use it? Yes, absolutely. We can say log user response 1 dot, and now see how it suggests all of the properties. And if I say data, just for a second, I want to show you something. It already knows that data in this case is a string because we used a generic, right? And when I passed in a value, I passed in a string. So that T is now replaced with string everywhere. So now I am offered all of the string methods on data, but I'm just going to print get result. Okay, let's give it a go. See what we see as a result. Well, we just see pencil because we said that the get result method would return the data. And this is the data in this case. Fantastic. Let's now try doing the exact same thing, but passing a different type for our data. So we'll have user response 2 equals new API response. Again, it was successful, but this time the data will be, let's say, an array of 2 names, Penchu and Minchu. Okay, and see how it automatically detected that it's a string array. And then we have no for the error again. All right, fantastic. And now we can just do the same thing as with the first response. We can log user response 2 dot get result. And we should see the array that we just passed in. There we go. All right. Now let's try one last example where we will have no data, but we will have an error. So const user response 3. This is the last one. New API response. This time I'll say is successful false. Data will be no. And the error will be a message, unknown error, for example. Okay, and let's now try to log user response 3 dot get result. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about what will happen now. What is the expected output in this case, keeping in mind how the get result method works and keeping in mind what we just passed in as arguments. Well, the answer is, in this case, we should receive an error. So let's run this. And yes, we see an error indeed. It says unknown error. This is the string that I passed here. Why did we get an error? Because there is no data and because we said that the request was unsuccessful. So this was to be expected. But here is how powerful generics can be. We only wrote one well-structured class, but it currently works with different types of data and with different types of errors. And it's so incredibly flexible. I personally really love generics, and I think if you spend some time working with them, because just watching videos is not enough for you to get a good grasp on them, but if you spend some time working with them and playing around with them, I think you'll like them too. So I hope this tutorial was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.